Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for that round of applause. Good evening, Mr. Reel. I hope you're doing well. Tonight's a very, very special episode of Mormonism Live. Do you know why?
I'm doing great. I have no idea what you just said. My earbud fell out of my ear. You know me, I'm just the clumsiest thing ever doing this show, and every time something goes wrong. But I am having a great day, a great evening. I'm glad that the audience has joined us tonight, and I'm excited for what we have, RFM.
Great. I see you're wearing your necklace again.
Yeah, I am wearing my necklace from time to time. So
okay, very good. You look very cool.
Me and Kwaku are both trying to set some trends here. Don't get on us. Leave us alone.
You're both way up there on the cool-o-meter.
Yeah, you know him. He's walking around with a pearl necklace, but me, I've just got this whatever they call this thing.
Yes,
some sort of chain,
stainless steel.
Yeah, you got it.
Hot metal, whatever. So guess what? It is our 200th anniversary. It's not our 200th anniversary. Well, it kind of is. It's our 200th episode.
Look at that. 200 episodes of Mormonism Live.
It's 5 years.
You know, Mormon Discussion and Radio Free Mormon, we've been doing those for a long, long time. And there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes for those. But a few years ago, you and I thought, let's do a show together. And here we are, 200 episodes later. I'm super excited. Like, this has been a ton of fun. I think we've done so much groundbreaking work in those 200 episodes and provided what I think is a high quality show on Mormonism over the last few years.
And a public service, no less.
Yes, for sure.
200 episodes weekly without missing a week, without repeating anything. No reruns. That's kind of amazing, I think.
Yeah, we haven't duplicated. We haven't, other shows we do, we sometimes cancel them, kick them another week into the future, sort of change nights that we do them, whatever. But Wednesday night, 6:20 p.m. Mountain Time, for the last 200 weeks, Mormonism Live has been on.
Wednesday is sacrosanct.
That's right.
So guess what? In addition to that, we're going, this weekend is General Conference. If you didn't know, if you'd forgotten out there, it is the first weekend. Well, it's the first Sunday in October, which is what determines the General Conference weekend. Same thing in April, right?
Yeah.
Are you reading all the kind comments that people are making in the live
I'm trying
chat?
to put a few up while you were chatting, but yes, this weekend is General Conference.
Yes. And so I'll be doing I'll watch it. I'll watch it so that you don't have to, but then I'll be going live immediately afterward to share a recap of each conference session. Each conference session, just thinking about it fills me with a nameless dread.
Yeah. Well, you suffer so the rest of us don't have to.
I know. It's like I got this, I don't know, savior complex or something.
Well,
I'm up here on the cross. I'm taking all of your sins upon me. I'm suffering so that you don't have to.
Yeah. It feels like the right thing to do, RFM. So thank you.
What would WWRFMD?
Yes. What would Radio Free
bracelets, rubber bracelets we're selling with that on them.
We should have those.
Yes. WWRFMD.
Yeah.
All right. And now I want to introduce an individual who definitely needs an introduction. This is going to be Dewey Cheatham. No, is it
Dewey Cheatham and how?
No, wait, it's not Dewey Cheatham. Dang it, it's Dewey something. Okay, Dewey, come on. Let's bring Dewey on. The Dewey. Yeah. What's your fake last name again? I forgot. I gave you a different
fake last name. Is Hickman.
Hickman. I'm so sorry, Dewey Hickman. I know that. But that's not your real name, correct?
That is correct.
And that's not even your real face.
No. I thought of painting one on my hat, but decided against it last minute.
So Dewey is, this is intentional. He has his camera, which he's using his phone. It's up high, so it's looking down on the brim of his cap, which is extended far enough so that his face is occluded. And we can't see it. And that's on purpose, everybody, just so we know, because, he's in one of those situations. I don't know how much you want to talk about it, but there are family members involved and all that kind of stuff who may not want his true identity to be broadcast out there, especially in light of what he's going to be doing tonight. So let me tell you about Dewey. I'll just call you Dewey, okay? I'll forego the last name. Is that Dewey has been in contact with me, I think, for over a year now. And there's been a few things he's wanted to talk about, but the one thing that he sent me that I just thought was exceptional is he's done these skits about things related to Mormonism, and they're basically audio skits. And I just think they're brilliant. They're very funny. They show a lot of knowledge about what's going on in Mormonism, current events, not so current events. But I think that it is something that would appeal greatly to this audience, because this audience is very well informed about things Mormonism. It's our 200th anniversary. We've been covering a lot of heavy stuff lately, and no doubt we will cover heavy stuff in the future. But I thought we'd just have a little bit of fun right now with Dewey. Also, when I was talking with Dewey last night, and I talked to him at great length, and he talked to me at great length, it was over an hour. Finally, when we hit over the hour mark, Dewey brings up something that sort of, I think, pops into his head. And I said, you got to be kidding me. Send me that. He sent it to me. This is huge. It's not funny, but it's huge. And we're going to get to that at the very end of tonight's show. So a lot of fun at the beginning, something big, I think, at the end. So, and it has never been talked about to my knowledge. This is going to be a document that the world has not seen yet, but will tonight at the end of the show. So, Dewey.
Yes, sir.
This has also gone through some permutations in that he had sent me the audio of some of his skits. And then I said, the audio is really not going to do it for this show, Dewey. Can you just sort of record it, some sort of video? So he took a crack at doing that. It wasn't bad. We were getting ready to do that. But then we thought, and Dewey agreed, or Dewey thought and we agreed, that it would be better if he just performed them live here on the show. So that's what is going to happen. And we've got 3 skits. Now they're from like 7 to 9 minutes long. We're going to do, or Dewey's going to do, one, we're going to talk about it a little bit, and then he's going to do another one. We'll talk about that. And then finally a third one, talk about that. Then bombshell. Then we'll have some phone calls. Okay. So Dewey, have you figured out which one you want to do first?
Yeah, I think I got a pretty good idea.
Does it have a title?
It does.
Will you give it to me?
I think this would be President Nelson versus apostates.
President Nelson versus apostates? Well, that's a good title.
Yeah.
You can't get into trouble with a title like that. All right. So go ahead, lay it on us. And by the way, I feel a little bit like Johnny Carson tonight. Do you know why that is, Dewey and Bill?
Because you're bringing on a completely unknown comedian?
Yes, we talked about this.
Actually making a name for themselves?
Exactly. So, hey, Bill does a great Johnny Carson. Bill, could you introduce Dewey to the show?
Yeah, Ed, I've got a special guest tonight. He's a great comedian. Not a lot of people know him yet, but after tonight, Ed, they're not going to forget him quickly. His name is Dewey.
Hey-o.
Hey-o.
Da-da-da-da-da. Okay, and the big multicolored curtain parts. You come out. There's the microphone. Here's the audience. There's Doc Severin on your left, and we're over here on your right. And go ahead and make history now, Dewey.
There'll be some wild,
no
neat,
pressure
crazy
there.
stuff.
Well, that's great. Yes. The audience is looking at me saying, great. It's another middle-aged, white, straight male complaining about the church, whose YouTube subscriber count is struggling to stay ahead of the number of videos he's uploaded. Yeah. One of those guys. Must be a Wednesday. Okay. So yeah, this first skit, and yeah, these are things that I sent RFM a while back, and he liked them. And that's going to go on my gravestone, by the way. RFM said he was phenomenal. Now, President Nelson has come up with a lot of names for members who doubt or who have left the church. And so in honor of the way that he's tried to pigeonhole us, I asked myself, what would a phone call with him sound like if I, a loathsome apostate, happened to be related to him and had his personal phone number? And so I asked my brain this question, and here's what it came back with. Kind of a fictional phone call between me and President Nelson, where I detail just how desperate and awful my life has become without him. At least this is how I think President Nelson sees all of us.
So this will be kind of like a Bob Newhart skit.
Yeah.
Doing the phone calls.
And one thing, if anything I do here does make you laugh, I hope you guys are keeping your microphones on, not only because it kind of sounds empty in here, but because you have the best laugh. RFM, you've got a great laugh. I'm
Thank you.
hoping
Okay,
that,
so I
you'll be able
unmuted myself just for you.
Okay, good.
What is that
Because,
you
yeah.
have you're holding in your lap there?
Let's see here. This thing?
Yes.
This is a phone I can talk on here.
Oh, you're
I've got a
actually going to
prop.
call President Nelson. Well, good.
Yeah, this will be live. We'll get a straight up reaction there. But yeah. So let's see. Here we go. I'm dialing. It's ringing. Hi, Uncle Russell. It's your nephew Dewey. Oh, you like to be addressed as beloved prophet. I'll try and remember that. Yes, we haven't talked since my family and I left the church. It's been a while. Well, we're doing really well. Yeah, okay. As well as can be expected, since the Spirit has ceased to strive with us. You are correct. Yeah, since we left the church, our lives have completely fallen apart. You will not be surprised to hear that when we were faithful tithe-paying members, things were perfect. But since turning away from the truth, our daily existence can only be described as one long, continuous dumpster fire. I guess I'd have to say it started a few years ago when I became lax in my discipleship and struggled to muster even a particle of faith. Yes, I did feel keeping the commandments was too hard. I was offended. That's why I left. You are correct. I never really did believe. I just 100% wanted to sin. That's right. Everything you think you know about inactive members is absolutely true. Yes, especially being a lazy learner. I've been so apathetic in my membership that my faith crisis was definitely not triggered by my thirst for gospel knowledge and wanting to know more about what past prophets had said than was simply available in the gospel doctrine manual, leading me to spend my free time researching church history online, which resulted in me stumbling upon a wide array of troubling issues involving Joseph Smith and every other president of our church, and subsequently spending countless hours studying everything the church has been hiding from its members for the last 200 years. That's definitely not what happened. Oh, you're right. There's nothing wrong with the church. It's just me. Once my natural man stopped yielding to the enticings of the Holy Spirit, I gave myself over to all manner of light-mindedness and loud laughter and evil speaking of the Lord's anointed. Oh, no, I wouldn't speak evil of you, of course. Just the prophets before you. There's nothing I could possibly criticize you for. I mean, everybody I know embellishes their faith-promoting stories to absurd levels while claiming they speak only truth. And who among us hasn't hidden incriminating church history from millions of believers? Let him cast the first stone. And I don't get me started on the stuff that has been passing for revelation in the church before you became president. Ah, that's what I'm saying. There's been a drought of revelation in this church until you came along. I mean, even if a prophet simply made a litany of changes to church policies and pretended it was revelation directly from God, that would be better than getting nothing at all like we have been from past presidents. A bunch of surface level mechanical changes would show the members that this church is experiencing an ongoing restoration because their prophet oozes spirituality. I thought you might agree. I believe you are that prophet who can bring daily revelation back to the church. I don't care if those revelations are all based on pet peeves you've been holding on to since the 90s, just waiting for everyone else to die off so you could be in charge. What your revelations lack in quality, you definitely make up for in quantity. Oh yeah, the way you changed the name of home teaching to ministering was truly inspired. I have overdosed on vitamins and rest several times just trying to keep up with you. You said it. You may be the greatest prophet this church has ever seen. Oh, I agree. You're definitely better than Hinckley. Everybody says so. Right, you have announced more temples than he ever did. Oh, yeah, good question. Why would I leave this renaissance of restoration and inspiration? It was the little things at first. I started shopping on Sundays. I dropped my tithing to 7%, and I began torturing small animals instead of reading my scriptures. Once I stepped away from the church, there was nothing to bridle my passions. It wasn't too long before I realized I was a child of the devil, and he wouldn't support me in the last day. And due to my poor example, my whole family did a half gainer off the good ship Zion with me. Oh, the family? What are they up to now? Just what you'd expect from a bunch of apostates. Currently, we are trying desperately to find happiness in wickedness. I know, the scriptures say we can't, and yet we are trying just that. Paul? Yeah, he's doing all right. I guess if we hadn't left the church, he'd be on a mission right now. Yes, I know. If only we had let God prevail, he could have been taking the glorious truth of the restored gospel to all the world. He was a bright, clean-shaven, future stake president, but now he spends his days in our basement playing video games and huffing roach spray and going 3 weeks between showers. Well, it could be worse. You know that girl he got pregnant? Well, it turns out the baby isn't even his, so false alarm. Can you imagine having 3 illegitimate grandchildren? Oh, you didn't hear? Our oldest daughter, Cindy, has twins at 17. Yeah, maybe if you had lowered the mission age some more, we could have sent her out to Guatemala instead of juvie. I think if we can get them serving before they hit puberty, they might stand a chance. Seems only yesterday she was earning her Young Women's Medallion, and now we're raising her children while she's in rehab again. Yeah, I too feel we could have avoided all this if we had simply read the For Strength of Youth pamphlet more diligently. I guess that's what happens when you don't follow the prophet. Well, Stephen's doing pretty good, I hope. He's 15, and I actually don't know where he is right now. You see, after I had my temple recommend revoked because of the necromancy charges, I immediately took it out on my children and started exercising what I could only be classified as unrighteous dominion. And as a result, I think this caused Stephen to become gay, because that's how those things work. Just ask your first counselor. I don't think BYU is holding conversion therapy courses anymore, but that would have been a great idea. Of course, when he came out to us, we kicked him out of the house, and now he's living on the street someplace. Oh, yes, why, yes. I would like information on cutting him out of our will and giving that money to the church instead. Thank you for that. Yeah, I don't know what to do about the youth today either. Maybe one of your worldwide fasts would do the trick. Oh, there's Sarah. Hey, sweetie, put down the crack pipe and clean your room. Oh, okay. Well, be back by midnight. Remember who you are. She's going out with her friends. Kids grow up so fast these days. Can you believe she's 12 already? I know, right? Her boyfriend is in his 30s, and we're thinking of they're getting married when she turns several months shy of her 15th birthday. So at least we've kept up some Mormon traditions, huh? Oh, right. We've kept up some Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint traditions. I forgot that's a thing. Paula? Yeah, she's coping well. She's right here next to me. So Paula went on a potent combination of antidepressants and vodka after I convinced her of the meaninglessness of life, now that we've become enemies to all righteousness. She is now convinced there is no God, and we're completely alone and abandoned. Uh-huh. Yeah, and a persistent fear of death has kept her awake most nights, and sleep deprivation combined with staring into the endless void of an uncaring universe has led her to an existential crisis. She gained about 80 pounds, and to combat her depression and to lose weight, she's seriously considering joining the opioid epidemic. Other than that, she's pretty good. Yes, I would say all this happened because we stopped going out to church. I have discovered firsthand that we are nothing but remorseless sociopaths without the influence of the church, and of course your prophetic guidance in our lives. Well, no, I don't want to blame myself. I do take the truth to be hard after all. In fact, since I started doubting my faith before doubting my doubts, I found a number of reasons to blame the church for my defection. I've started criticizing the brethren, especially when the criticism is true. No, when prophets make mistakes, I don't push blame onto the members or the culture of the time or God himself. That's your job. Now, well, yeah, I'm not surprised that the light of Christ has all but been extinguished from my soul. It's like the pride cycle come to life. I'm just compelled to leave the church, but not leave it alone. I practically live on the ex-Mormon subreddit. Oh, that. Well, you know those people who have no part nor portion of the Spirit of God? Reddit is where we congregate. It's like a gathering of depraved souls who know not God. A kind of like Stake Conference, only it's online. Yeah, I don't know that we'll ever come back. I think we've wholly given ourselves over to Satan at this point. Well, I just got my paycheck, so I'm off to Vegas for the weekend. I'm disappointed in me as well. Love you too. Bye. Okay, he's off.
That's what I'm talking about. Oh my gosh, this
Okay,
guy's funny.
there you go.
You're going places.
All
Oh,
right.
maybe we should stop there and not do the other two bits because you're pretty ahead right now. You wouldn't want to take a
Okay.
chance
Yeah,
on
we can end on
tanking
a high point there.
Oh, okay. So I was laughing a lot. By the way, this
I
is why you
appreciate
never want to
that
go with me
greatly.
to a movie or to a play or anything that has anything funny about it because I will embarrass you as I sit next to you and laugh louder than anybody else in the theater. I will laugh even when other people are not laughing at all.
Well, that's the thing is whenever you start laughing, I start laughing automatically, even if I don't know what we're laughing about. So I was happy to hear you laughing there. I mean, you've got this deep, rich kind of, that I can't do without sounding fake. But I imagine everybody else loves this as much as I do. So,
Well,
so
fortunately, I can do it.
that was good for me.
I can do it without sounding fake. And Bill, I guess Bill was on mute. Were you on mute during the whole thing? Because I didn't hear you laughing a lot, Bill.
No, I know that if I laugh and he talks, the audience may not be able to hear both. So I tried to hold a few in.
I'm sorry, everybody. I was guilty. As sort of
I'll ask
charged
for it.
there by Bill by insinuation.
There were a few
And
Well, I'd
times I
rather
couldn't
listen to
help
you
it.
laugh than listen to me
couldn't
talk
help
as
it.
well. So
I couldn't
Yeah.
help it. So I'm blaming Dewey on this one.
Yeah, there were a few times I couldn't hold it in, but for the most part, I just tried not to interrupt the audio. But the audience loved it, by the way, folks. There were tons of comments with folks noting that they found it funny as well.
Oh my gosh. And the reason I'm blaming you, Dewey, is number one, because you're funny and you make me laugh. Number two is because you need to hold up a little bit. Okay. When you're getting laughter like you're getting from me, you need to hold off a bit, take a little beat, and then come in just as the laughter is trailing off. Okay. Just a little
okay.
tip from the big guy. So, how did you come up with this idea? Was it Bob Newhart? By the way, I think most people know that Bob Newhart, of course, he had a couple of very famous TV shows that had nothing to do with how he got started, or little to do with how he got started in show business, which was being a stand-up comic who would make telephone calls to different people. And the humor was that you listened to his side of the phone call.
Mm,
You know about that, right?
I do not. Looks
Oh
like
my
I got
gosh.
some
Well, let me
homework.
see here. The LP that he came out with that I don't think I had, but that, thank you, Dan, RFM, the Living Laugh Track, is The Button Down Mind of Bob Newhart. I think that was the name of the LP that he had, just a collection of his bits that were, I think, all of them on the phone. Yeah, he perfected that. And I think that you have gone a long ways toward that. But if it wasn't Bob Newhart, where did you come up with this idea?
No, the idea was just, I think it came out when President Nelson said something about not counseling with people who have left the church or something like that. And it just got me thinking. I was originally thinking I'd have a conversation with my own mother, but that just got depressing really quickly.
Yeah.
And so that kind of switched to, what if I was talking with President Nelson and kind of talking back to him about everything that he said about people who have left the church, and try and, make it, uh, absurd.
I think you
So,
succeeded.
yeah.
I think what you ended up doing, I don't know that you made it absurd yourself, but what you did was you picked up on so many things that you're riffing off of from President Nelson, as well as other things, but mostly President Nelson, things that he said, that you highlight the absurdity of the things that he has said. Would you agree with that, Bill?
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with like the number of revelations means a whole lot more than the quality of them. You know, if we could just knock out more temples and 2-hour church and 27 other things, then the volume alone should speak about how he is truly a prophet, seer, and revelator.
So do we?
Well, and a lot of these things he's been holding on to for decades, right? Like the name
Yeah,
of the
like
church.
grudges, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Has
President Hinckley
anybody
put him in
gone
place
to?
at one point.
Has anyone gone to President Hinckley's grave just to see if it looks like it's been dug up recently?
Yeah, I imagine you'd see smoke coming out as he's spinning around over and over again. Friction.
No, I was just talking about this grudge that President Nelson seems to have against former President Hinckley and how it might manifest itself at midnight. So, Dewey, you got another skit ready to go. It's number 2, and I'll try and hold my laughter. If you try and hold on to let me laugh, start fading off, then move in with your next line, okay? We'll work on this together on this live show.
Okay, you got it.
What's your next one?
To take the time to breathe as well in between, so I think that'd probably be useful.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Next skit is?
This next one. What's that?
Next skit is?
Next skit is the Book of Mormon Unveiled.
The Book of Mormon Unveiled. What's the premise of this skit?
Well, the premise was the church put out a short video titled "How Can It Not Be True? The Book of Mormon."
We did a show on that. We did a show on that.
Yeah. And so I think it was around that time that it got me wondering how Joseph Smith himself might refute the claims in that video if he were properly incentivized to tell the whole truth. And then that idea morphed into the abomination that you're about to hear.
All right. Well, I hope it's the abomination that maketh desolate.
Yes, the land of abomination. So, and kind of like you mentioned before, there's a lot of things that I riff off of. And so a lot of what I do here is meant for people that you guys have already educated.
Right. Yes.
So if they're educated in the issues of Mormon doctrine and probably know more about church history than your average apostle, then this will probably be pretty good.
Shouldn't take much.
Can I just tell you that I will go on record as saying that I believe that the least informed member of our audience knows more than the best informed apostle.
I think there's probably a good chance that is absolutely true.
So we're going to sit back and wait whenever you're ready to go with this abomination.
Abomination. Ding dong. Okay, here we go. So just need something to knock on here. Yes, who is it? Someone to see you, sir. Oh, and by the way, if anybody knows where I stole the voice for William Clayton here, let us know if you figure that out. Someone to see you, sir. Ah, thank you, William. Invite them in. Are you Joe Smith? Yes, I am. How can I help you? Well, I came to inquire after the Book of Mormon, where it came from and the story behind it. Step into my office. Have a seat. I've entertained many people on this topic. Well, that's kind of you. What do you want to know? The angel, the gold plates, power of God? It's all completely true. I give you my word. I vouch for the entire story. Wild horses couldn't make me change. I'll give you $1,000 if you can prove to me that you wrote the Book of Mormon. And not by translating it through the gift and power of God.
The grift and power of God.
Grift and yeah, Freudian slip there, huh?
Sorry, excuse me.
What? You'll give me $1,000 if I can prove to you that I wrote the Book of Mormon? Yes. Deal. What would you like to know? I'm an open book. I have a list of things to prove you translated the Book of Mormon by the gift and power of God. Oh, do you now? How could it not be true, huh? I'd like to run this list past you and see if you can prove them false. I made most of these up myself. Let's do it. First off, you wrote the Book of Mormon in 65 days. That's impossible without divine help. Correction, I wrote it in 6 years. I dictated it in 65 days. What do you mean? I imagine you had 6 years to come up with a story for a book, and you tested those stories out on your family at night around the fire. You think after 6 years that you could write a decent book? Maybe. Even a guy with a 4th grade education could do that. The only requirement for writing a book nowadays is to be able to talk in coherent sentences, which I accomplished a lot of the time. But how could you keep everything straight in your head? All these characters and places and timelines, they're too complex for one person to make up. It must be divine. I had notes. Notes? Yeah, notes. You know, a little piece of paper with words on it. But witnesses said all you had was a rock and a hat. And next to the rock, notes. It was a white hat. It let plenty of light in. You could talk for hours at a time with nothing but a few notes. Only an inspired prophet could do that. Or every preacher and Methodist exhorter on the planet. Have you ever listened to those guys? They drone on for hours. I suppose. I've got a cat, not a dog. I don't know if you can hear that.
Oh, yeah, we can all hear that. I thought you were doing it.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was part of the skit.
Yeah, I'm a little,
Ventriloquism.
Well, I hope it goes away soon. You're going to hear me talking in here. Okay, ignoring the cat. That's Joseph Smith's cat. He happens to be in the room with us. It's not terribly complicated. I wrote an outline of everything I wanted to cover, and when I got to the end of my notes, we'd take a break, skip some rocks, and I'd swap them with new notes. But how did you dictate the whole book without making any mistakes? Who says I didn't make any mistakes? Well, you said it was the most correct book on earth. Oh, I said that. I might be biased and prone to exaggeration and a narcissist. There were tons of mistakes, but they were only grammatical, right? Not quite. My personal favorite was where I accidentally brought King Benjamin back from the dead to do some translation work. There were zombies in the Book of Mormon. Only the first edition. And I had Mary give birth to God himself until later on my doctrine on the Trinity changed, and now she gave birth to the Son of God instead. There were other problems too, such as, pick a topic I don't know anything about. You can bet I got it wrong. Like what? Anything archaeological, cultural, economic, genetic, linguistic. I was just making stuff up. I'm sure you'll find problems with all those things. Oh, wait, I thought this conversation was happening in like the 1830s, but you just referenced genetics. If you're going to follow me, you better get comfortable with anachronisms. What now? I'll be the first to admit I don't know a thing about shipbuilding. Using homemade tools, can 4 inexperienced brothers build a ship capable of sailing the ocean? And 2 of them were kind of whiners. I'm not sure. I'm guessing no. And another thing, you should know I don't know anything about ancient Indian money. Did they even use coins? Who knows? If future archaeology proves me right, I'll be more surprised than anyone. Also, you think 1 million dead armor-clad bodies on a hill would disappear without a trace? Maybe. I hope for my sake they can. Did they raise horses and elephants and pigs and goats? I don't know. I should have looked into that first. Did they speak French? I only know one word in French. Adieu? That's French? I was going to say C9. Darn it. So there's a lot of problems with this book. Tons. Most correct book indeed. I was a confident little scamp, wasn't I? Okay, but some scholars say that the translation was correct, and I quote, more so than he had ever before seen from the Egyptian. That proves beyond a doubt that your translation is of God. Ah, that story. Yeah, Charles Anthon couldn't read Egyptian. He what? Yeah, he couldn't read it. Nobody could in 1828. Are you serious? Yep. Nobody had it figured out. And let's not forget that I said it was written in Reformed Egyptian. So even if Anthon could have read Egyptian, he couldn't have read the plates. Like, ever. So there's no way he could have said it was translated correctly. But then he let that one sink in for a minute. And while you're at it, ask yourself, why did I seal 2/3 of the plates if nobody can read the non-sealed portion in the first place? Well, that doesn't make any sense. Welcome to Mormonism. So, did you really have gold plates? What, you think I'd be working in this dump if I had my body weight in gold? Your body weight? Witnesses said the plates weighed like 60 pounds maximum. Yeah, and that's how you know they weren't made out of gold. Well, what were they made out of? Whatever scrap metal was lying around, certainly not gold. Why do you think I wouldn't let anybody see them? Well, because God would smite anyone who looked at them, of course. Yeah, if that were true, you know all those enemies of mine who were desperately trying to find the plates? Yeah. I would have just let them find it. Wham! Enemy's gone. Problem solved. Oh, wow. And that Harris woman, man, she was the worst. Martin Harris's wife, Lucy. If there was anyone who needed a good smiting, it's her. Steal my 116 pages, will you? I was wondering, couldn't you just use the seer stone to find the missing 116 pages? Why didn't I think of that? I've been finding lost things as a treasure digger my entire life. You think that's the first thing I would have tried? Oh, because I did think of it, and I've never found once anything hidden objects looking at a rock, so I definitely wasn't finding the 116 pages with it. I'm just glad nobody else suggested it. But then I was wondering, why didn't you just translate those pages again? Your retranslation would have been exactly the same as the one before and would have proved you're a prophet. Do I really need to explain this to you? No, I get it. If you were dictating some notes in a hat, you'd have never come up with the same translation again. Not in a million years. I still can't believe anyone ever believed all that garbage about evil men altering the manuscript in an effort to discredit me. This was a handwritten document. If anybody altered it, it would be obvious. I don't know what substance I was on when I came up with that, but it was apparently really good stuff. Well, you told me all of this for $1,000? I tried to failed to sell the copyright to the Book of Mormon. It's about time I made some money on this thing. Well, I should be going. Before you do, just one final thing. None of what we've talked about leaves this office. Just kidding. Tell whoever you want. They won't believe you anyways. Well, it's been a pleasure, Mr. Smith. As it has been for me, Mr. Hurlbutt. Philastus Hurlbutt. Gesundheit. Have a great day. Well, goodbye. And the door closes. What a great guy. William. Yes, sir. Pencil him in for an apostleship when there's an opening. Is there an opening? It's only Tuesday, sir. Ah, well, put him on the list. I'll place him in between William Law and John Bennett. Perfect. My prophetic powers of discernment tell me we haven't heard the last of him.
Bravo. I'm not sure I can endure a third skit, but I know the third skit. It was actually the first one I heard. I love it. Now, can you do this William Clayton voice once again? Because you had challenged us to figure out whose voice you were doing for William Clayton.
Right. Yes, it sounds something like this. Does that sound at all familiar?
Underdog?
Somebody's got to know this.
I'm guessing Underdog, but...
Oh. No, this was actually... I stole the William Clayton voice from Weird Alma's song about... what was it about? I forget the name of it. Anyways, Weird Alma.
Was it the one on
I
the
don't
Book
know
of
if
Abraham?
celebrity crush is the right phrase but he's hilarious. I'd love to
Well,
meet him.
he's very funny. He's very funny, but you're like Weird Alma without the singing, without the music.
Yeah. I don't have to put it to song and I don't have to rhyme.
Hey, Dewey, hang on a second. Dan Vogel. You know who Dan Vogel is?
I do.
He just weighed in on what he thinks about your skits.
Oh, uh-oh.
And he says, are you ready?
Oh, we got a professional in the room here. This is
Oh,
great.
yeah. Dan Vogel knows funny. And he says, quite entertaining.
Oh, well,
You can almost hear him saying that with a snifter of brandy and a smoking jacket on,
I
reclining
say
in a
he's
nice
probably
big
sitting in a large
beanbag
armback chair and reading some volume of Shakespeare while you listen. I
Quite
can see it.
entertaining.
Indeed. Well, that might replace the words on my tombstone right there.
I think you
Dan
should. I
Vogel
think you
said
should
he
give Dan
was
Vogel
quite
top billing.
entertaining.
You may end up having a very tall tombstone because you're going to have a lot of great quotes you're going to have to put on there. You could have one as big and as tall as President Nelson's.
Ooh, well, I wouldn't want to
Tombstone.
outdo him.
Tombstone.
And
We're
the
talking about a
spider might be
tombstone.
taller than is allowed in that zoning code there.
Oh yeah, he's killing the view from the other graves. So anyway, so you got do you want to tell us anything about that skit you just performed before you go to the next one?
Yeah, let's see. So I put this together because I was trying to answer how I think Joseph Smith did everything when, he came up with writing the Book of Mormon. Because I think there are perfectly simple explanations for all of it.
Mm-hmm.
I did catch that After Midnight episode you did where that cultural hall guy said that the gauntlet had been thrown down by Jacob Hansen, everybody's third favorite apologist, who wanted to debate you on if there's a plausible naturalistic explanation for the Book of Mormon. You remember that?
Yes, all the plausible explanations for the Book of Mormon are naturalistic. I do remember that. Go ahead, Dewey. What do you want to say about it?
So I'm not sure what he thinks would be so difficult about writing a book. I mean, you could do it. I could do it. And Bill could do it. Right, Bill? I mean, I don't see any part of the Book of Mormon that would be that difficult to recreate.
But you see, I think that is the cardinal sin in apologetics is you cannot maintain or even consider that position as being possible. Anybody who says such a thing has to be shot down immediately because I think that the Book of Mormon rises or falls on its impossibility to produce naturalistically.
Yep. So, not sure why it's so impossible to create, but, well, the apologists sure seem to think so.
Well, it's 500 pages long.
It's a decent sized book.
There's one reason.
Yeah.
It cribs
That's
an
never
awful
been
lot
done
from the
before.
King James Version of the Bible.
Oh, biblical. Yeah. Linguistics. That sounds impossible to recreate.
It mirrors a lot of stories from the Bible.
Yeah. And a few other books.
And it repeats a number of those stories several times within the Book of Mormon itself.
Yeah. The hero's journey.
But throw in
It's just
these
like
and
Star
thous
Wars.
and thys, and you're in business.
Yeah. And it came to pass, and you take those out, and you got half the book weight.
Yeah. And it also represents a very common belief prevalent in Joseph Smith's day that the ancestors of the Native Americans came from Jerusalem and were Hebrew.
By the
What else
way,
can you explain these savages who, built these, beautiful cities and these mounds that are all over the place? They must have been white.
By the way, you take out all the Isaiah chapters. How many pages do you have? Because those should not count.
3.
And no, there's a little bit more than that.
Take out Isaiah from the Book of Mormon, and all the it came to pass is you got 3 pages left.
Also, I noticed in your skit that you said 2 of them were whiners, but you didn't say the other 2 were Layman and Lemuel.
Oh, hey, that's kind of funny. That's kind of funny. You think you might want to add that to your skit? 2 were whiners and the other 2 were Layman, and then there was Layman and Lemuel. Yeah, let's face it, Bill. We're just not as funny as Dewey.
Okay.
It's hard to improve on perfection, as those who believe in the Book of Mormon already know to be the case. So, Dewey, you got a third skit here. Now, this is the first skit that I ever heard you do, and I thought it was so funny. I actually have heard it now twice, once more recently, once a year ago. I'm going to hear it again tonight, so don't expect me to laugh quite as much. So, Bill, this is going to be up to you to hold up the laugh track, okay?
Okay.
This is really, really funny. It's really brilliant. I'm not going to say anything more about it, except, yeah, it's really good.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to need you here, Bill, because this last one was inspired by you.
Ooh.
Yeah, a
Nice.
while back now, you said something about how nobody in their right mind would trust a calculator if it gave us the same kind of answers that the prophets give us.
Yeah, I think I got that from
So,
somebody else, but yes, I did say that.
yeah. Well, the general idea started bouncing around inside my head and kind of came up with this here. So, and yeah, we agree that if these guys were in any other profession, they would have been fired a long time ago.
Yeah.
Hey, Dewey, before you get into that,
Yes,
can
sir.
you tell people where they can find your stuff?
Sure. Let's see. So I've really only got a YouTube channel up right now with some
Mhm.
stuff on it, but the name of the channel is The Holy Roast. And so probably the easiest way to get there if you just go to theholyroast.org.
And that's ROAST, holyroast.org.
Yes, .org.
Okay.
Then that should just forward you to the right place right there.
Okay, so the holy HOLY roast ROAST.org, and that is the name or the address for your website.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So you know you're in the right place if you see the tagline laughing at the ridiculousness of Mormonism. So that's
All
down
right.
there. It's either that or it was going to be the Holy Roast, true but not useful. I was torn between the two.
Okay, I think you made a good choice, though.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
were talking last night about the difference between the Holy Ghost and the light of Christ. Do you remember that?
Yes. Yes. And I don't think we came to any conclusion, much like the prophets and apostles before us.
The only reason we're talking about that is because this is one of those theological weak spots in Mormonism where they are obviously making crap up to try and come up for why they're two different things, right? Because they seem to be kind of the same. But Holy Ghost, that's much better than the light of Christ. Light of Christ will get you to the church, but you got to be in the church to get the gift of the Holy Ghost, unless you're reading the Book of Mormon before you join the church, and the Holy Ghost bears witness to you that it's true. So it's all very confusing. And we decided ultimately, I think that the light of Christ is Holy Ghost light.
Right. Yes. Like Miller Lite, only more filling.
Yes, and playing on the LITE pun.
Indeed.
All right. So now, having filled up a little space there, so people will remember that I am still on the show and that Bill Reel is too. Dewey, we're going to hand it over to you for this last skit. Make it good, okay?
Okay. Here we go. All right. So, welcome to Infallible Electronics. How may I help you? Yes, I'm looking for a calculator. Sure, what do you need it for? Just basic calculations, add, subtract, multiply, divide. I'll be using it to make important decisions, so I just need to be able to punch in my question and get an answer. Oh, I've got just the calculator for you. Follow this calculator and you won't go astray. Sounds perfect. Here you are. Wait, why is there a submit button instead of an equals button? Oh, that. All your inquiries must be submitted ahead of time for the calculator to look over first. Really? Why? There are some questions the calculator doesn't have a good answer for. The calculator will not be answering those questions. It'll ignore my questions? Just the questions it's gotten wrong in the past. It's gotten questions wrong? Oh, yes, horribly wrong. But don't worry. But don't worry, I'm certain the answers it gives today are the right answers. You're certain? Well, listen, I need a calculator that doesn't make mistakes. Ah, I see. Okay, how about this? I'll sell you these 12 calculators. They work together to give you the right answer every time. What are you talking about? If you get an answer from one calculator, you can check it against what the other 12 have said. If they don't all give you the same answer, then the first one was probably just giving you its opinion. So if the majority give me the same answer, that's the right answer? Probably. What do you mean, probably? Well, sometimes they'll answer a question differently over time. All 12 of them could give you the same answer, but then later that answer will change. So their original answer was wrong? Think of it more as the original answer was a product of the culture of its time. These calculators are affected by culture? Could be. Or maybe it's you. In fact, it's probably you. Me. Maybe you weren't actually ready for the right answer when you asked the question. Or maybe you just didn't believe the answer enough, so it didn't turn out right. Or maybe your calculators are broken and shouldn't be trusted. Okay. I can tell you're a guy who wants the truth. Yes, I am. I'll tell you what, I'll throw in 3 more calculators at no extra charge. Will one of these calculators give me the right answer? Yes, this one, the top calculator, the president of the calculators, is always right. This one, you're sure? Absolutely. What makes this top calculator different from the others? Oh, it's the oldest out of all of them. The oldest? Yeah, it just kind of outlived the rest of them. And that makes it the best? That's how it works. I don't make the rules. This one was made in 1924. That's 100 years old. That's really old. I know, right? And it'll give me the right answers? I guarantee it. Okay, good. Now, it might be a few years before you find out the answers it gave you were wrong. Wait, what? But you'll eventually know when they've given you the wrong answer. Well, I need to know if the answer is wrong now, so I don't follow it in the first place. That would be ideal. But considering the calculators themselves don't seem to know when they're giving you a wrong answer, you're just going to have to wait. Wait for what? Wait for what? Oh, for the calculators to figure out their mistake. You're not making any sense. Well, let's say they told you last week that 1 + 1 = 5. And then this week you might punch in 1 + 1 again, and they just don't say anything. And then eventually they'll just come up with the answer, we don't know. Well, how is that helpful? This is what the calculators do when they realize the answer they previously gave you was incorrect, and a new answer will be forthcoming once the calculators have determined you've forgotten what the old answer was. What? Why? They're hoping this way you don't realize that they were ever wrong. This process can take years. Years? I don't want to wait years. Well, what you may not realize is this is a huge improvement over previous models. It is? Yeah, well, what used to take decades for these calculators to fix a wrong answer, and sometimes 130 years. Seriously? But just recently, the top calculator got something so terribly wrong, and there was such a backlash over it, it came up with a less wrong answer in like 3 years. Yes, but the answer was still wrong. My boy, you keep your eye on the president of the calculators, and if it ever tells you anything, and it is wrong, then you'll give me my money back? What? Oh, no, goodness, no. All sales are final. I was just going to say, if you believe it anyways, you follow the calculator, then you'll be better off that way. You'll be blessed, if you follow the wrong answer. Why are you saying that with a twinkle in your eye? Because you don't need to worry. The calculators will never be allowed to lead you astray. So let's get this straight. I can trust these calculators to give me the right answer every time, right? Absolutely. And then you said these calculators are imperfect? Of course they are. Nothing's perfect. So I can't trust them to give me the right answer. Of course you can. You can trust them with your most important life decisions. But they've been wrong before, so they might be wrong again. Some people go digging through these calculators' history looking for imperfections. Yeah, because they want to know if they can trust these calculators. Look, the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. They do math differently? All I'm saying is you got to have faith. If you simply trust these calculators, everything will turn out fine in the end. What do you mean, in the end? Yeah, in the end, after we die. After we die? It'll all be fine then? Yes. So you really don't have to worry about whether these calculators are right or wrong, just as long as you follow everything they say. and then it will all work out after we die. That's what I'm saying. And if you don't follow them, you won't go to heaven, and you'll never see your family again. What? Yeah, trusting these calculators is not going to work for me. I'm leaving. Wait, of course it'll work for you. Trusting these calculators works for everyone. Well, for some people anyways. Not the ones that killed themselves, of course, but people killed themselves trusting these calculators? They were mostly gay teenagers, if that helps. You're insane. Goodbye. And he's gone.
Oh my gosh. Bill.
Yes.
Whew.
So let me tell you some of the comments from folks. We thank thee, O God, for a calculator. It's wrong to criticize the calculators, even if the calculators were wrong. When the calculator speaks, the thinking is done.
Nice.
Remember, the calculators are perfect and the people are not. And also, a couple of people suggested they'd love to see you create a skit to tackle Jacob Hansen's collective witness model, otherwise known as the 5 witness model, otherwise known as I got to pick which 5 things I chose, which then lead me to tell you what I know is right, even though no one else in the entire universe agrees with my collective witness model.
Jacob Hansen, again.
I'm just grateful it's not the 11 witness model. Otherwise, he'd have to drop his trousers to present it.
Yes. We're all grateful it wasn't that. The 5 witness model, I've got it written down.
Nothing like having a third thumb, you know what I mean, RFM?
No, I'm not sure I do, Bill.
Okay.
Bill? No, not unless you're, I don't know.
That's the Hansons there. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Go ahead.
trying to plug a
That
dike.
reminds me of a story where a brother-in-law of mine was going to the bathroom and his daughter walked in on him and then ran out and ran and told his wife, "Mom, you won't believe Dad can pee out of his finger." So there's your third thumb.
Then it's kind of funny. It's different than what you said, but I do like your use of that that expression. The past is a foreign country, and then I would say they calculate things differently there.
There you go.
A
Dan
calculator.
Vogel says,
Yeah.
"Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Dan Vogel
Recalculate.
wants to add, a calculator is only a calculator when acting as such."
Nice.
There is something to this, though. When you relate who these men are, what they claim to be, compared to a calculator, we all can go, it's ridiculous. Like, if a calculator behaves in the way that a prophet, seer, and revelator has for 15 men over 200 years, they're useless. And when you relate it to a calculator, you go, yeah, that calculator would be useless. And somehow, when we believe in the thing and we need it to stay the thing, we somehow justify it in our mind that no matter how much mistakes, no matter how many changes, no matter how many things are disavowed, we just keep pressing forward. It definitely is a group of true prophets from generation to generation.
Yeah, in any other situation, this is pretty insane what we're willing to believe.
Yeah,
it is, and that's what makes it religion. I think you're right. Just brilliant. And I hope that the time comes. It could come right now if you want to put a mask on or a burqa or something to go into a stand-up comedy show. You must have considered that.
Apparently, there's somebody in the area here who is thinking of creating an ex-Mormon comedy stand-up thing. And he's invited me to join in. At the very least, I'd probably like to be in the audience.
Are you going to accept?
Well, probably.
You could be the masked comedian.
There you go. Yeah.
The other thing is,
put my hat like this way and pretend I'm reading stuff out of it and follow the prophet.
The other thing that's weird, and you sort of hit on it, you only know when the calculator's wrong when that calculator, which was the oldest calculator in the room, when that calculator just completely dies. And then the next oldest calculator claims that calculator was wrong. And then if that calculator dies as the oldest calculator in the room, then the next oldest calculator can then reverse or testify of whatever that calculator taught. And again, it's sort of this weird game where the all of us alive right now can't criticize anyone, but we can all acknowledge that the guy before, who's dead now, he was completely wrong and spewing bullshit.
One of the things that I thought was so funny was when it surrounded this issue that Bill just raised, Dewey, and it's this wonderful disjointedness between the fact that the person who's coming in, who's not the salesman, is just looking for a calculator who will give him they'll give him the right answer, right? And then you're talking about, this is the one that you need to go to. This is the oldest it's the president of the calculators. It's the oldest one. This one's been around for 100 years. And the other guy's going, he's just saying, why is that a good thing? But your character, who's the salesperson, is just going, this is what makes it so great. It's just like there's this total disconnect. You're saying this is a huge selling point, and the other person's saying this is the opposite of a selling point. One of the things I find so funny. So, Dewey, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to this big bombshell now. You ready to go to the bombshell?
Oh, okay, bombshell.
Let me set this up. I'm setting up the bombshell. And the way I'm setting it up is that first off, I'm going to go to this quote from Wendy Nelson, Nez Watson, or Nay Watson, N-E-E, right? The president's wife, who in January of 2021, 2021, excuse me. So January 2021 was interviewed on the Church News podcast. And she was a special guest being interviewed by a special interviewer. And the special interviewer was Sherry Dew. And as part of that interview, we got the following. And I've got the transcript here, which we're going to read through if we can put that up on the screen. And then I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about this bombshell that you discovered, and which we have on a slide now so we can show it to our audience as well. And then I'm going to play, or Bill's going to play, this whole clip so you can compare it. It's amazing. Okay, so Sister Sherry Dew is talking about, okay, your husband has now been president of the church for 3 years. Remember, it's January of 2021. And I'm going to skip this and go down to, if you can hang on a second there. Actually, I can go back. Oh, sorry. This is what happens when we both do it.
No,
at the end, he says, what have you learned particularly in this last 3 years that has been somewhat distinctive from the earlier years when you were traveling with your husband? Because, of course, this is what's on everybody's mind and what they want to know the answers to. What have you learned about the church? What have you learned about people? And now Wendy Nelson comes up with this whopper. She says, imagine this, exactly a year ago, December 2019. So almost exactly a year ago, because this was January 2021. So a year and a month ago. Exactly a year ago, December 2019. And let me stop and say, maybe they recorded this in December and it wasn't released until the following January. I looked at our 2020 calendar to see where we would be going, where we were traveling. You remember this one, right? And looked from January through July. Now that's half the year. Every single month, there was a huge trip and arenas, huge arenas booked. And I thought, okay, well, this is what we'll do. And I knew that in between those, there was at least one huge trip a month, that in between we would be doing local opportunities to be with our local congregations. And I don't know if that means Utah, I'm guessing. Utah congregations or maybe U.S. congregations. There's things going on in addition to a big trip, which is probably outside the U.S. every month, is what I think she's saying. There I am. I've sort of got my whole head set into this. Is how it's going to be set into. This is how it's going to be in 2020. And suddenly, in early January, I looked on the calendar again, and everything's gone. Meaning all those trips were gone. She doesn't seem to know why they were gone, or who erased them. If this is like on the computer, maybe some kind of schedule or a whiteboard, something it could be erased from. Everything's gone, meaning all those trips were gone. So this is early January. This is pre-COVID. By the way, when you listen to the audio, that is actually, I believe, not Wendy Nelson, but Sherry Dew, who interjects that. Because Sherry Dew is helping her make this point. This is amazing stuff we're talking about now. We're almost there to the punchline. So this is early January. This is pre-COVID. And Wendy Nelson says, and I said, where did those trips go? And he said, I just felt like we didn't need to do them. I just felt like I should take those off the calendar. This is what Wendy Nelson is representing her husband, the president of the church, is saying in response to her question about where did all those appointments and engagements go for the first half of 2020. And then she follows it up in case anybody's not getting the point of what she's saying. So there is a prophet in the land. His name is Russell Marion Nelson. Now, Bill and I have, and others have made a great deal of fun of that because it's a ridiculous story on its face. It's as much as to say that God talks to President Nelson and says, hey, take these trips off your calendar because I'm going to send a worldwide devastating sickness that's going to kill thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, but they can go fend for themselves. I'm just letting you know so you can take it off your calendar, right? It was absolutely ridiculous on its face. And yet Sister Nelson's out there promoting it, and Sister Dew is eating it up, just as happy as she could be. But then you found something, Dewey, that helps give us a more rational explanation to this story, didn't you?
Yes. Well, wait, there's more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in one of those skits, I mentioned that President Nelson is embellishing his faith-promoting stories to absurd level, right?
Yes.
I guess President Holland does that too. I guess it's their generation's favorite TikTok challenge, apparently. But those embellished stories, you guys covered them on at least one of your episodes, I think, right?
Yeah.
Where President Nelson, I get him confused, but he was in an airplane over Mozambique when suddenly
No. He wasn't in the airplane over Mozambique. He was over freaking Delta, Utah. But there was an incident at Mozambique involving robbers with machetes. And then there was the lady in the hat. Those are the three great stories that he has embellished, along with the help of, by the way, his wife, Sister Nelson. She's an embellisher par excellence.
By the way, I think Dewey was intentionally trying to mix all three stories together to get a chuckle out of you. So he didn't think the plane trip was in Mozambique, I don't think.
Wait, is that true, Dewey?
I was going to say that, I was in an airplane over Mozambique when suddenly armed gunmen stormed first class and threatened to kidnap his wife, and they put a loaded bazooka to his head that failed to fire, but then sent the plane into a death spiral, and everybody else, including Lady in a Hat, was freaking out. But
she was the one who was screaming
calm because of his knowledge of the gospel that he dozed off, but then he was awoken by the Spirit and ordered to Wendy out of the cabin so he could record some revelations, and that's when God told him that,
really? That's very funny. And I killed your joke. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You did it a second time. Go ahead. Is there more? Yeah. After he throws Wendy out of the cabin in order to record his revelation?
And the armed gunmen disappeared as mysteriously as they appeared. And
yes.
Yeah, just going off memory, so you could probably describe them more accurately than I could. But yes. I've got a never before heard of spiritual embellishment where President Nelson or Wendy Nelson, or probably both, were lying to make Russell look more like a prophet.
Those two are thick as thieves. Tell us what you mean. By the way, we've got it up here, and I'm going to go ahead and go to it. You want to?
You got that picture?
Yeah, go ahead. And
okay,
I will take it off the screen in the new way that Bill. Bill just did it. Okay, never mind.
Okay. So what we're looking at, and this is, I recognize this is a completely random, out of the blue situation. 1 in a million. What are the chances this would fall into my lap kind of thing? But you heard what Sister Wendy Nelson said previously there, right? And so after she got done, keep that in mind there. So what we're looking at is a journal entry from a friend of mine. And so I was talking with this friend of mine, this was just a couple of years ago probably, and he'd never heard of that Deseret News podcast and what Wendy had said about the schedule, right? Now, for some reason, and I forget why, he wants to pull out his journal and read an entry to me. And
this is your friend's journal.
Yes. So this is my friend's journal. I asked him if I could take a picture of it. He said, yeah, here's the, the pertinent parts right here.
What's under the other side, under his hand? He puts his hand over the other side.
Oh, those are the secrets of the kingdom there that cannot be discussed with mere mortals such as ourselves.
Dang. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we'll just satisfy ourselves with the right side.
We'll have to be happy with that for now. And so this journal entry had something to do with our conversation that he had written down. And he'd written this down after he had an interview with his stake president. And who is his stake president, you ask? Why, he is none other than Mark Woodruff, who, of course, you all know as president of the Oak Hill Stake. And
Okay, hang on a second. Hang on a second. And I'm sorry. There's Mark Woodruff. You're talking about
Yes.
Oak Hill Stake in Provo. Camille, excuse me.
And by the way, RFM, Camille has noted that she was a secretary for a general authority
At the
and
time.
already understood other parts of things we've been saying as being sort of embellishments or not true. So she already has some credibility, and then this adds to it.
Well, she answers a question that I had as well. Oh, that looks real. Mark Woodruff is in the first presidency office. She already knows that. We have a little article. It's going to further buttress that. But she says R of B. Do you know what that is, Dewey? Upper right hand corner, R of B. It says prayer dash R of B. See it?
Oh, let me take a look.
And by the way, Dewey, you can look up if you want to, because
your face isn't on.
You're
the screen
not
right
on
now.
the screen at the moment. So
Oh, yeah?
yeah.
RB means restoration of blessings. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yes. Brilliant, Camille. Thank you. So prayer, restoration of blessings. Now go ahead. So Mark Woodruff, by the way, let's stop right here. Oh, Brett Norquist is watching from SeaTac. Wonderful. He wants to go bowling with you, Bill.
Yeah, we've been bowling before.
Oh, fantastic. I've been to SeaTac before.
Cool.
Okay, so here's the deal. I went ahead and looked up the Mark Woodruff connection here. And there we are. Okay, so let me see if I can do this. So here we are. Church News Callings. This is July 28th, 2019. See the list of new stake presidents called to serve around the world.
And just a note, as you're scrolling to it, Dewey gave us the story. You made the connection, and then you looked up the Mark Woodruff's name and came across the Church News. This is sort of the last thing that we came across right before the show started.
Yeah, because Dewey was talking about Mark Woodruff being not only a stake president, but also the executive secretary for President Nelson. I thought, well, can we find some confirmation of that? Not that we don't trust you, Dewey, but here it is. And they're showing, actually, I think that's, I don't know, is that the second token to the Melchizedek priesthood?
Does it have a name?
I don't think we're supposed to be seeing that. So let's scroll by that quickly. By
Will you
Church
give it
News
to me?
Archives. And here we have all these different stakes. When they have new stake presidents, we go all the way down to the very bottom of this list. Provo, Utah, Oak Hill Stake. June 16th, 2019. President Mark Woodruff. Mark Woodruff, 64, Executive Secretary to President Russell M. Nelson. So apparently both of those things check out.
Well, there it is.
Yeah.
Yes. So this journal entry had something to do with our conversation. And as he was looking for what he was looking for, he was reading this out loud, and he mentions, Mark Woodruff there, as you can see. And so he is a stake president and President Nelson's secretary, as if one or the other calling isn't enough. So
But being the executive secretary, that's his day job. That's what he gets paid for, I presume.
It's a modest stipend, I'm sure.
Yes.
So
I won't rest until Radio Free Mormon makes a modest stipend.
Well, luckily we know about how much that is.
Yes, that's what I'm striving for.
So my friend finds this entry that he's looking for, and he's scanning for what he wants to read me. And this journal entry is from February 2nd, 2020. You can kind of see that in the margins. That's just how he writes his dates. And he's reading from parts of it out loud as he scans. And if you look at that picture, and in the lower right-hand corner, so he says President Woodruff gets into the office at 8:30 each morning, and President Nelson arrives at 9. Last year, it was 8 a.m., 7:30 for President Woodruff. Now, he's just kind of saying this out loud as he's reading through. And then he explains to me that President Nelson is coming into the office later than the year before for health reasons. And his doctors said he needs to scale back his activities for 2020. So he's coming in a half hour later in the morning. And then, if you can see that there, only 2 or 3 trips this year, global ministry, in parentheses, for President Nelson. He reads this to me, right? And I say, whoa, hang on a second. What did you just say? My friend says, well, President Nelson's doctors told him that he had to cut way back on his traveling. So you're telling me that he wiped out his travel plans for health reasons? And my friend says, yes. Apparently several people had to gang up on President Nelson to get him to scale back.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wait. So you're telling me that in early 2020, President Nelson's secretary, your stake president, told you that President Nelson cleared off his travel plans because his doctors told him to? Yes. So I tell him, okay, you've got to see this. And I pull out that Wendy Nelson quote there that we just listened to. And he had no idea this is what she had said about the very same travel schedule. He had no idea that in his journal, he had the inside track on what was really going on.
He has the receipts that shows that Wendy Nelson was not being completely straightforward with Sherry Dew and the entire audience of the Church News podcast.
Yes. So there is a prophet in the land, brothers and sisters.
And his name's not President Nelson. Hey, what I want to do right now is I want to play the actual audio of this. It's a couple minutes long, and there's just something about the way she says it that I cannot recreate when I'm reading the transcript. And now that we know this, okay, look, there's 2 possibilities here as far as I can tell. Either Wendy Nelson knew the real reason that he took the dates off the calendar. By the way, there were still 3 left on the calendar, according to this. They weren't all gone, but they were all gone but 3. So presumably, Wendy Nelson sees the calendar. She knows that they're not all gone. She knows that there are 3 there. And I've got a feeling she's close enough and in President Nelson's business enough. I mean, it is her husband, to know that this is because of health reasons and not because of, oh, I just decided I didn't want to do it. And like she's going to let it go at that. The other possibility is that she didn't know that he did respond the way he responded. He knew it was for health reasons. He didn't tell her. He just took him off and said, I just felt like we shouldn't go. It's possible. I just can't see that really happening. And what I have more trouble believing is that after a year, this is a year later that she's telling the story, that after a year, she wouldn't have come to an understanding of the true nature of why it was they canceled those trips. And instead, she's telling this as a faith-promoting story about how President Nelson somehow knew that COVID was coming and therefore took all of his engagements, his travel plans off of the calendar for 2020 before COVID hit, thereby demonstrating that there is indeed a prophet in the land. Do we have that particular audio yet, Bill? By the way, Bill and I have decided that we're not going to have any calls tonight. Is that correct, Bill?
Correct. Yes. And I think just before you start, can we just spend just a moment? We did cover this in terms of the story. I think we covered it in connection with also another story with David Bednar and him talking about various things about COVID and how they were handling things at the temple. Yeah, by the way, if you're looking up there, Dewey, I've got that. Yeah, good. What I want to say, RFM, is there are reasons why it is so logical and rational to dismiss Wendy Nelson's comments as not being true. And I want the audience to clearly understand. So Wendy stands up and gives this spiel about how we have a prophet, because the reason we know we have a prophet is that President Nelson knew before COVID hit to clear his calendar.
Yeah.
And he only has 3 trips scheduled rather than 100 trips that he would normally have scheduled in any other year, whatever that is, 50 trips, something. And you and I were talking before the show started, the idea that there's still 3 trips left on the calendar is nonsensical, because if COVID's going to hit, you're not going to have any of them. Also, we talked about this in the show. If you reserve arenas or conference centers or hotel conference rooms, whatever you reserve, and you pay the deposit, and you've got all these things that are lined up that where Nelson's going to go around and give all of these speeches. And we already know in the past that he definitely reserves locations at times. It's not just in the chapel of a stake center or a ward building.
Oh yeah, huge arenas that take a lot of money, I'm sure.
Yes. And so when you go last minute to cancel those before COVID hits, you're going to lose the deposit or at least a significant percentage of that deposit. If you wait till COVID hits, there's going to be a lot of pressure on those entities to give you your money back because no one's allowed to go out. So by canceling these trips early also makes no sense. The fact that there are 3 of them still on the schedule makes no sense because those 3 will also have to be canceled. The fact that President Nelson is told to let his schedule go, but doesn't know what's coming by his quote in the next conference where he says, I told you this was going to be a marvelous conference, but even I didn't know why this was going to be the case, right? So he didn't know COVID was coming. And then the last one is that not only did he not know, his knowing to do something about it, even though he doesn't know the reason, he doesn't have any ability to give the saints any preparation for what's coming, which is the whole purpose in having a prophet.
Mm-hmm.
So the Wendy Nelson story makes 0 sense. Anyway, I wanted to make sure the audience sort of understood that.
Okay, really good. And I appreciate that. So we can hear this question asked by Sherry Dew and responded to by Wendy Nelson.
Here we go.
To your list, and it will be a great thing.
Is that loud enough?
No.
It's pretty low.
Is there a way to turn this up? Give me a second. I'm just trying to play around with let's see what this is. Nope.
If anybody can figure this out, I know Bill can.
Yeah, maybe.
Put it a different way. If anybody can figure this out, I know it's not me.
Generally, on a media player, there would be a volume button where I could turn it up, and I'm not seeing that. So let me try something.
President of the church.
So that's going to be on purple, I think. So let's do this. Give me just a moment.
Okay, on purple?
On my Rodecaster. And so now,
purple.
Yep.
Okay.
So now I'm checking to see if I can manually turn it up. And sometimes I can, but on this particular thing, I cannot. Main mix.
It's a good thing we have the transcript.
I just have to throw out a comment here. Somebody, Steve Bolin, said he should have told people to get toilet paper.
Right.
Yes, he should have. He should have.
That would
By
have
the
been
way,
actually
the fact that I did the transcript first before we had the problem with the audio shows that there is indeed a prophet in the land.
Yes. And he's no spring chicken, so he's going to have to hold back on his travel plans.
Yeah, I was talking about me that time.
Oh.
Unfortunately, we will be left with this sound audio. So, folks,
everybody be very, very quiet and lean in. Turn up your speaker, okay?
Yep.
Maximum effort.
Yep. So here we go. I'll mute myself so that all of it is just that sound.
Me too.
That is really true. Then you can add that to your list, and it will be a great thing.
Okay, your husband has now been president of the church for 3 years. You traveled, of course, widely with him before then for a number of years, but it's different when your husband becomes president of the church. It's different traveling with the president of the church than it is with even your husband as a member of the Quorum of the 12. During the last 3 years, you've been to more than 30 countries. I think it's in the neighborhood of 35 countries. You've seen large audiences and very small ones in some places where he's chosen to go where the church is young. What have you learned, particularly in this last 3 years, that has been somewhat distinctive from the earlier years when you were traveling with your husband? What have you learned about the church? What have you learned about people?
So let's just refine that to say since this last year was no travel,
Right.
we're really talking about 35 countries and
In 2 years.
14
Uh-huh.
states in 2 years. That's what we're talking about. And let me just say one other thing about this year of no travel. Imagine this, exactly a year ago, December 2019, I looked at our 2020 calendar to see where we would be going, where we were traveling, and looked from January through July. Every single month, there was a huge trip and huge arenas booked. And I thought, okay, well, this is what we'll do. And I knew that in between those, there was at least one huge trip a month, that in between, we would be doing local opportunities to be with our local congregations. So imagine, there I am, I'm sort of got my whole head set into this is how it's going to be 2020. And suddenly in early January, I looked on the calendar again and everything's gone, meaning all those trips were gone. So this is early January.
This is pre-COVID.
This is pre-COVID. And I said, where did those trips go? And he said, I just felt like we didn't need to do them. I just felt like I should take those off the calendar. So there is a prophet in the land. His name is Russell Marion Nelson. So that's just a little context there. But
and that's it. Then she goes off to something else. So this is just remarkable to me because once again, as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, not only is there no way a year later she's still under a misapprehension. If ever she was under a real misapprehension as to why those dates were taken off the calendar, she's not that way after a year. How does she bring up this story, this faith-promoting story, a year later without ever once having mentioned it to her husband and giving him the opportunity to correct her misapprehension? And how does she tell the story and then later on her husband doesn't hear about it and say, by the way, it didn't have anything to do with that. It was because my doctors. This is, I believe, an obvious example of Wendy Nelson making up a story in order to, now notice that it's not made up out of whole cloth. The story is already there in its basic form. And apparently both those things did happen, at least in some measure. Obviously, COVID happened. And obviously, he canceled a number of his trips in 2020. Okay. So we can all understand that. But the connection that she's making is not supported at all by the evidence. In fact, it's contradicted by the evidence. I believe Wendy knows that. She is going ahead anyway, in spite of that. And she's telling a story that she knows to be false, but she's telling it for the best of all reasons. And that's to help people believe that her husband is indeed a prophet of God. And if she has to make up a story or exaggerate or embellish a story in order to make that point, she will do so. That's my take on it so far. And I want to ask at this point, Bill and Dewey, what you think about this. What is her knowledge?
Yeah. So the other option, so first off, it is so much more rational, this journal entry that we see, that President Nelson is getting up in age. We're already told in the very previous line to this line that rather than coming in at whatever it was, 8 a.m, now he comes in at 9 a.m. or whatever it is, right? So we're already told that it's because of his health that his schedule is adapting to allow him to have less time in the office. And then the very next line is also that he has less time to go out and do things. He is beginning to shorten up his schedule. That feels so rational. All the pieces and parts of this entire narrative come into place if you understand that's the motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's absurd what Wendy says. So we can either go, well, with God, all things are possible, and there must be some piece of information we don't understand, or we can just be rational human beings and go, Wendy's not telling the truth. Now, she could be not telling the truth, as you're pointing out, because she's trying to make her husband turn this story into a faith-promoting story for those that she is speaking to. The other option isn't any better. The other option is that President Nelson is deceiving his wife because he's embarrassed about his age and the fact that he's slowing down. So it's possible she's a naive participant in spreading this story because that's the story she got. What Nelson told her is what she was told. But then you have to deal with a prophet, seer, and revelator deceiving his wife, which if he's willing to deceive his wife, then by the way, folks, it makes much more sense for all the other deceptions he's carried out for it to be like, okay, so well, he deceived me too. And the apologists go, well, maybe he didn't know about the SEC thing. Maybe he did. Well, you either got to agree that Wendy's lying or you have to agree that President Nelson is deceiving her. And if he's willing to deceive her, he sure as hell is willing to deceive the rest of us.
Yeah, why stop at the world?
The world is not enough.
Yeah.
No,
I
I
think,
go ahead, Dewey.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was kind of going back and forth on this myself, but then I noticed that she is implying everything. She's not actually saying, she says, well, COVID hadn't happened yet, but it was just about to.
Yes.
But before they knew about that, the schedule is cleared and there's a prophet in the land. You do the math, brothers and sisters. She's not coming right out and saying, yeah, God told him to do this. She's implying.
Yes.
So that kind of tells me she's trying to not straight up lie, but she's more than happy to kind of put the pieces out there and let the members put the puzzle together. It was kind of like a friend of mine who had a sore tailbone, and he told me it was his Super Bowl injury acting up. And if you didn't ask him, if you didn't ask him any more questions, then you would assume what? That
he played in the Super Bowl.
He played in the Super Bowl, and he hurt his tailbone while playing in the Super Bowl. But upon further inquiry, it turns out that he was watching the Super Bowl with some friends. And when he came back from getting some food, he was about to sit down, and a friend pulled the chair out from underneath him, and he landed on the ground, and he hurt his tailbone. So now it's his Super Bowl injury. And that's the power of implying something.
Yeah. I got two other things I want to say about that. Number one, the church, this is not the first occasion. The second Watson letter is another example of Watson sort of keeps his mouth shut for years into the future and doesn't straighten out the record, right?
And this isn't Wendy Watson, by the way.
No, this is, what's his name?
This was a prior first presidency
secretary
with the last name Watson.
Yeah. By the way, thank you, because I wouldn't have known to disconnect those two. But one is that Woodruff is the secretary for this. Surely Woodruff has heard this Wendy Nelson story. But what happens in the church is that the loyal company men who then listen to Nelson embellish the plane story and listen to Nelson embellish the Mozambique story, which is contradicted by the mission president and the missionaries who were serving there at the time. When church leaders in the top 15 embellish stories, it's sort of nod, wink, wink, all of the underneath loyal men, it's your job to keep your mouth shut and not correct these things. So Woodruff doesn't fix it, number one. Number two is, you're right, Dewey. It's implied, but not quite stated. And maybe that's a loophole. Except that the very manual that these leaders put out, called the Gospel Principles Manual, clearly explains that honesty requires that you not mislead people. That even if you hold information back, that's also lying and deception. So the church leaders may see these kinds of loopholes as a way around the truth, but their own theology condemns them as this is lying and dishonesty. So there really isn't a way around it. And maybe it's just time to start telling the truth.
I think those are excellent points. What I wanted to make sure that I added is that this is an important case study that happened recently. This is just 3 years ago when this occurred. And what's going on, I believe, is that Wendy Nelson is lying. Okay, let's just say lying. Can we say that? Okay, she's deceiving. She's intending to deceive her audience to think one thing, which she knows or should know is not true. Okay, so I'll say deception instead of lying, if that makes it any better. So she's trying to deceive her audience, but she's not trying to deceive her audience to hide a fraud. She does not, I do not for a second believe that Wendy Nelson believes that her husband is not a prophet. I believe she believes her husband is a prophet more than her husband believes. that he's a prophet. Nobody in this church believes that President Nelson is a prophet more than Wendy Nelson believes it. That's my take on it. Okay.
He's president of his fan club there.
Oh, absolutely, she is.
Biggest cheerleader.
And so that's not what's going on. She's not trying to hide what she thinks is a fraud. She is deceiving because she knows that President Nelson is a prophet. And if people could only understand and believe as strongly as she does that he's a prophet, then the world would be a better place. And if I, as Wendy, need to deceive people about President Nelson's prophetic abilities and gifts, then she is more than willing to do that in order to help people understand that he really is a prophet, as she knows he is. So does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So then the other thing is this.
In the way of a good story.
Exactly. And the problem is this, is that this is not a one-off. This strikes at the core of Mormonism, much as the same way as Paul H. Dunn, making up stories, fantastic, miraculous stories about his youth and then pawning them off on the membership is true. You know, when you've got a leader in the church who does that, then it makes some people kind of queasy about Joseph Smith because he looks like he might be fitting into that same mold. We don't need leaders of the church or people in the church deceiving people in ways that cast doubt on prior foundational leaders. Does that make sense? So there's those two things. And I think I said that, does that make sense twice? If you go back to Emma Smith and her, I think she made a couple of affidavits toward the end of her life. She says things in it, which I think fall under the same umbrella as what Wendy Nelson said about her husband to prove he was a prophet. Things such as Joseph Smith not needing to, he could not dictate a well-worded letter, much less a book like the Book of Mormon. And apparently that's already been refuted by some people just from like letters he wrote, because he could write a well-worded letter at and around the time that he was producing the Book of Mormon.
Other things, letter is a little on the poetic side there.
It is, and it's a little bit late for purposes of this analysis, but I know what you're talking about. I think that was 1840s, must have been. I think it was Nauvoo time period. So, but this is like 1829, 1830. You know, he didn't ask anybody to read back anything when he came back, and he just picked up where he left off, and we hear this in the church all the time. He didn't have any books or papers with him when he was translating, even though we know that he must have, at a minimum, the Bible, if not the Bible and the Adam Clark Bible commentary. These are things that are said by an individual which are not accurate reflections of what really happened. And the person knows, this is Emma, just like Wendy. I believe Emma knows that this is not a reflection of the way it actually happened, but that she believes with all her heart that Joseph Smith did dictate the Book of Mormon by the gift and power of God. She knows that there are certain things that he did that make that look kind of questionable and hinky and might give a critic a toehold in criticizing the Book of Mormon, right? I mean, if he's got a Bible there, why does he need a Bible? Okay, so we'll remove that from the narrative in order to give the naysayers no opportunity to legitimately criticize the Book of Mormon. All I'm saying is that I think that what Wendy's doing is what Emma did, and I think it's what a lot of Mormons have done over 200 years, which is to gild the lily, to change the story, to make it more incredible, to make it more miraculous, intentionally, but not because they think it's a fraud, because they think it's true. The church being true, as opposed to being a fraud. Therefore, any story that I can come up with, if I have to make it a little better than it actually happened in order to help people understand the truth of the church in the Book of Mormon, well, that's just the price that a lot of people seem to be willing to pay. I think it's a price that Wendy Nelson was definitely willing to pay, and this isn't the only time either that she's gone out on this particular kind of limb. But I think Emma did it as well, and I think a lot of people have done it throughout the history of Mormonism and probably pretty much every other religion under the sun as well. So there, I've gone on for too
Very
long.
true.
Any thoughts about that before we close out?
No, just a great
Call
point, I
it
think.
polishing that turd.
Polishing that turd?
Polish that turd.
They're using some elbow grease on it, definitely. And I don't know. I mean, I just think that that's what happens. And it sounds strange, but I think that that's what's going on. They're not lying to cover up a fraud. They're lying to promote a truth.
By the way, I think it's an easy thing to do. If you are speaking to an audience that already is wanting to get to that conclusion, they're already willing participants to get to President Nelson is a prophet of the Lord, then fudging the details a little bit, nobody's going to have their critical brain on. It's not how it works. Our brains, when we are expecting the answer to be the answer, we sort of just follow along on the path. When we see magicians, you know this as well as anyone, when we see magicians on stage going through a certain set of actions, we sort of know what's coming. You put the box up there, you got a saw, you got the ladies in the box, and you cut the box and you split it in half, and everybody is already expecting that this woman's going to get cut in half. So your brain isn't really going like, where do the legs fit? Where's the second person? Where, you're not really doing that. You're just awed by the magic. And I think, as you pointed out, thousands of times in church history are we led to believe the Sweetwater Crossing, the Transfiguration of Brigham Young. It doesn't matter. We all want the answer to be, there's magic here. God talks to these men. The church is true. And so you're already, as you point, a willing participant to go all the way down the line of thinking, no matter how absurd it is. Your brain doesn't want to pick out the absurdity.
And can I just give Sherry Dew a compliment that she's no dummy.
No.
She's a very intelligent person, and she's worked her way up in the church, and she's done, I think a great job for herself. She's not a dummy, but she didn't laugh in Wendy's face when she told that story.
No.
And that's because she intentionally went along with it. She wasn't going to contradict. She wasn't going to challenge her. She wasn't even going to question her on the obvious problems with that story, right? Instead, she's going to underscore it because she knows the story already coming in. She's going to underscore it by saying, and this was pre-COVID, right? To make sure everybody understands the miraculous nature of this story and President Nelson taking the dates off the calendar for 2020. And Dan Vogel says part of the illusion is provided by the audience. Yes, absolutely. And I think that Sherry Dew was doing her part as a member of the audience in that.
And one last thing. These are two women in the church who do not use primary voice. These are two women who have some sort of inner confidence that they don't need to necessarily repeat what those men say. Might be the only two women ever put in front of a camera in the church that do that speak sort of their own voice. As you point out, these two are not dummies, and this is all an orchestrated thing. Whenever the church needs a certain question to be asked and a certain conversation to happen, often Sherry Dew is the one picked to facilitate that conversation.
By the way, if you go back to the transcript, or if you go back to the actual audio and you can play it back for yourself where you can crank it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Notice what Wendy says right before she launches into this story. Imagine this.
Imagine this.
She says, imagine this. Just like in January of 2016, when she and her husband, then still an apostle, addressed the young adult devotional from BYU, Hawaii. And that's where she says, it's like, imagine this. Imagine what if the Savior were already appearing to his most faithful and devoted followers in these small meetings that CNN and the internet know nothing about, and that he's preparing for his second coming. What would you do if you knew that? What would you do today in order to get your lives in order, right? And start following the commandments and repent of all those things you're doing you shouldn't be doing. That's a totally made up story. She totally made it up. And she wants to imply it's true, but she gives herself an out at the very beginning where she says, "What if?" And in this story, I had to note that she starts it in a similar way by saying, "Imagine this."
Yeah.
And I think that's her way of being deceptive, but keeping the back door open in case anybody calls her on it.
Yeah. And remember, she was the one who said arenas. I was thinking on the front end that I was sort of supposing that. I
Mhm.
didn't remember it was in the actual audio or transcript,
Oh,
but it's her that said arenas. Again, just an absurd story when you take all the facts into consideration.
yes. Well, I think that's it for tonight. Now, Bill and I had talked about, we usually have callers at the end of the show, and Bill had suggested here we got a private chat that goes on the side that nobody else knows anything about. And this is not really an episode, I think, that lends itself to having people call in.
Yeah.
You know, what are you going to say? Wow, that was really funny, Dewey, or that wasn't funny at all. And you know, you don't have questions on the Tonight Show after Jerry Seinfeld gets done with his first nationwide stand-up routine, right?
Right.
So we won't do that tonight, but we will have lots and lots of call-ins this Friday night, 2 nights from now, it's 8:00 p.m. Mountain Time on the next episode of Mormonism After Dark. So if you got anything you want to share, please save that, call in then. We'll have a great time as well. That will be on General Conference Eve. And I think we're going to have a great time. Oh, you want to say anything about Mormonism After Dark?
We've been saying, folks, I really think give us some time. I think this is going to be one of, if not the greatest show in Mormonism. And what I mean by that is like funny, lighthearted. You get to have a good time. And what we found is that episode 5, which has a certain reason why it was at 2,400, which is because we limited it to an 18 plus audience. From that point forward, we have
by
left
the way, Bill, I'm sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt you. Also, why I thought episode 5, which was on August 30th, which came in at roughly 2,500 views total.
Yeah.
That was on the eve of Labor Day weekend, wasn't it?
It might have been, yes.
Was it September 6th that was Labor Day weekend this year?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it was August 30th. And that's why I figured people would be out of town, and maybe that's why they didn't watch it so much.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
We limited that episode. You had to have a YouTube account. You had to verify that you were 18 or older to be able to watch episode 5. From that point forward, we have left it open. It is marked for adults, but you don't have to be an adult to watch it. It's not geared towards children, and we notify YouTube that it's not. But from episode 6 to 7 to 8 to 9, they are increasing by a decent amount. And as of right now, I can just double check, but I know it's over 8,000. YouTube Studio, give me just a second, take a look. Content, live. We are at 8,064 views for the most recent episode of Mormonism After Dark.
Wow.
The show is growing, I think, fast for what a YouTube show does for something in this sphere with Mormonism. Folks, if you're not watching Mormonism After Dark, you're missing a great time to have a lighthearted, hilarious hour and a half. And I think if you go back and listen to the last episode, I think you'll laugh your butt off. I'll use different language on Mormonism After Dark, but I think you'll laugh your butt off. And I would just highly recommend that if you haven't tuned in, at least give it a shot and try it. It is much more adult oriented. There is some bad language. We make some crass jokes.
Not for me.
For you too. And yeah, the guy who
talking about Jacob Hansen.
Yeah. It's a really fun time. We had a great time with calls the last time around. Folks, if you're in the audience and you have seen some of Mormonism After Dark, please put your 2 cents in. Let other folks in our show here know whether you liked it or not. But I think it's a great program, and I think we're really onto something, and I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Well, me too. It's a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Bill. And Dewey, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know we've had a great deal of difficulty, you and I, in getting you scheduled, but eventually we made it. We got you here, and we got you here on the 200th episode of Mormonism Live. So thank you for joining us. You're a funny guy. You are funny. That's gold, Jerry, gold. And I want you to pursue this on the stage because I think you've got quite a career ahead of you.
Well, I should say that you're the one who kind of launched me into this. You've been encouraging me in this for at least a year and a half now. And I finally kind of gave in and said, well, if Radio Free Mormon thinks that that I could do something with this, then it might be worth a shot.
Well, I'm glad, and I hope you'll repeat that sentiment every time you're on stage and direct people to the Radio Free Mormon and Mormonism live shows.
Yes, Radio Free Mormon made me do this.
Yes. So I get all the blame as well. But thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for watching the show. Our 200th episode next week on Wednesday. Please join us at 6:20 p.m. Mountain Time for the 201st episode of Mormonism Live. Thanks, everybody. Good night.